Hi, so this is my explanation of cause and effect, or actually more pointedly, being at cause versus being at effect. This is one of the foundational ideas in psychotomy. And the goal of psychotomy's work really can be summarized as typically people come into the psychotomy living at effect, and they leave living at cause. So what does that mean? Cause and effect is a scientific principle that all results, all effects, have a cause of some sort. Living at effect or living at cause is the understanding that we have two fundamentally different ways of explaining or experiencing the relationship between cause and effect in the world and in our lives. So that this notion of cause and effect, or at cause and at effect, is really two things. It's your state at any given moment, and it's also a continuum of experience and development. So in terms of state, at any point in time, you are either experiencing the world as being at effect or at cause. At effect is probably what we're most familiar with. This is where the world is done to you. Things happen for reasons that are out of your control, possibly even out of your awareness. This is what can be called victim consciousness, which I think in some respects is true, but kind of inaccurate in some important ways, and a little bit dismissive or even disempowering. At cause is when you look at the world and you experience yourself as having agency, as having power, being able to get things done and make choices. In terms of a continuum, though, what I would say is that effectively we are born at effect. As a child, you are helpless. You need adults and people to respond to you to function in the world. And then as we grow up, we become more and more competent, more and more powerful, and feel more and more agency. And one of the ways I like to think about this is sort of take the picture of being like a boat on a river. As a little kid or early in your life, you're very high up on the river in this little boat, and you're being swept along by the current, by the experiences and the things that are happening to you. And you feel like you're at the mercy of the currents. And you might fall in, and it's kind of overwhelming. And then as you get more skill and mastery in life, you get better at being in the boat, you start to be able to see the currents in the water, in the river, and you start to have the power to paddle and move your boat in and out of currents. And that's becoming increasingly at cause. And this, I think, is both a personal and a sort of a spiritual development, because I think at its highest point, when you really get into mastery, you're aware that you're surrounded by a context, by forces and elements and movements that are bigger than you ever possibly imagined, but you're starting to see where they are, how to work with them. So you can paddle a boat, you can move it through the currents. And I think that's what we're learning to do here in psychotomy. But my suspicion is that at the highest level, where Lisa and various people like her are at, the river disappears, and you discover that in fact you're on the ocean, and that you can move your boat in any possible direction. So that's kind of how I think about it and experience these levels of awareness. And I think, Buddha put it very, very famously when he said, your mind creates the world, the way you view the world, whether you see it with love and compassion or complaint and fear. Both of those things, create the world you experience. And I would say he's right. Your mind does create the world. But initially, the world creates your mind. I mean, what a lot of neurology and neuroscience and trauma work is showing is that, the experiences we have as little children can shape the way in which our nervous system responds to the world. So I also think that's an important part of the psychatomy work, is that we are healing and opening up and clearing the blockages and the traumas and the misperceptions and experiences in our nervous system, so that we can then operate at these higher levels where we can see the patterns in the river and even then, move on to the ocean and transform our lives. So that's my thoughts. Bye.